All right, well, welcome everybody. My name is Rebecca Morgan, and I am one of the health sciences librarians here at UK's Medical Center Library. And I am here today to talk to you about why it's so important to write an advanced review protocol. So this is a protocol for a scoping review, or for a scoping review, a systematic review, or any type of advanced review that you might be writing. I just want to make it absolutely clear that this presentation is on why you should be writing a protocol, not necessarily how you should be writing a protocol. And that is because we already have a wonderful presentation about how to write a protocol, or at least the tools that we have available to help you write a protocol. And it is available on our systematic review guide. And the link is right here at the bottom of the page. And all the links will be sent out to everybody along with the slide deck after the presentation if you've registered for it, and the links will be clickable in the slide deck as well. So you'll be able to access this after the fact. So please take a look at this presentation if you're interested in learning a little bit more about how to access tools to actually guide you through the actual protocol writing process. This presentation, again, is about the importance of writing protocols and why it's so important to include this in your process of writing an advanced review. So before we can talk about why it's important to write a protocol, you really need to understand what a protocol is. A lot of you might already be familiar with them, but just in case, PRISMA, which you might be familiar as the really true gold standard reporting methodology for advanced reviews, defines them as a systematic review protocol describes the rationale, hypothesis, and planned methods of the review. It should be prepared before a review is started and used as a guide to carry out the review. Detailed protocols should be developed a priori, made publicly available, and registered in a registry such as Prospero. Now, you might notice that they use the term registered. There is some questions that some people have, like, oh, am I publishing a protocol or am I registering a protocol? Well, some protocols are published. Most of them are probably registered. It is really the most advanced systematic reviews with the most, I would say, high-level therapeutic implications that would actually be published. Most of them, if you were doing any kind of review, should still, if it is not publishable for whatever reason, should still go into a registry like Prospero. If it does not fit the fairly strict guidelines of Prospero, you can still go into the Open Science Foundation or another registry and put it there instead, where it can permanently reside and house that information about your work. Let's just take a look at some quick examples of protocols so you can have a sense of what they entail. So here's one that is registered on Prospero, and can everybody see, just to make sure that the link did open? Okay, great. And it did open to this National Institute for Health and Care Research. So basically, a protocol is just listing out everything that you plan to be doing in your systematic or scoping review. It has your defined review question, that has where you plan on conducting your searches, what studies you plan to be including, your populations, your main outcomes, any kind of bias or quality assessment, and your strategy for data synthesis. Very, very straightforward stuff, but it's essentially serving as a guideline for how to go through and run your entire project. Yeah, and I just want to show the second one. This is one that for a scoping review that I'm currently working on right now. And this is using a tool that we actually provide through DMP Tool to help write it. And you can see, again, it talks about risk of bias in the project. Oh, didn't start at the top for some reason. It has the title, where it's being registered. We registered in the Open Science Foundation instead of Prospero, so it's slightly different. All the collaborators. Information like a detailed rationale for why this project is going forth, our objectives, and then detailed information like our inclusion and exclusion criteria, including a draft search and where we're planning on running our searches. Advanced review protocols are important because they require you to come up with an advanced research question that explicitly states the purpose of your research question. You would be surprised how many people come to us and ask to work on systematic reviews, and they do not have a solid research question thought out. You cannot write an advanced review, develop a search strategy if you do not have a solid question. So protocol is forcing you to take this step to determine even your type of review by determining the exact clinical question that you are going to be asking. More recently, it's requiring you to provide a draft of the search. This is proving that the draft is feasible and that you are in fact showing that you're getting kind of the results you want, that the terms are valid, that you're really thinking through this process before you're starting it. It's making you think through the full selection process. It's making you determine ahead of time, this is how articles will be selected and excluded, because so often you're right in the middle of it. You don't want to be thinking through that while you're going through it, because these are advanced reviews that follow a strict methodology. They're not something that you should be working on and figuring out as you're going along. And again, it's helping you figure out your exact outcomes. Requires the authors to list and define all these outcomes for which data is sought, and requires the outcomes to be prioritized. So again, as you're going through the results, you're not saying, oh, the data is going in a way that I didn't quite expect. I'm actually more interested in this outcome. No, it is setting your planned outcomes, and it is forcing you to stick with them. Because too often we are finding, I'm actually going to jump ahead really quickly, we are finding the systematic reviews are being done very poorly. And protocols help stop non-starters from happening, because bad research is a waste of time, money, and effort. And while that's true for all types of studies, it is just as true for advanced reviews. And I just want to point out this study that was done recently by the European Journal of Pain that found out that in their discipline, available evidence indicates that almost all systematic reviews in the published literature contained fatal flaws, likely to make their conclusions incorrect and misleading. Only 3 in every 100, take that in, only 3 in every 100 systematic reviews were deemed to have adequate methods and be clinically useful. Protocols help keep this from happening. They help you have your structure in place, your selection criteria. They make sure that this is a feasible project before you start. And that is truly the key of why you need to write a protocol before you start your systematic review process. Because really, they do help ease the process. They clarify your objectives. They establish your topic is feasible before you even start the project. They establish your methodology. And another thing that I don't think people really think about is that, if you're following the PRISMA protocol checklist, which you should, because that is the reporting checklist, that is the methodology you should be following when you were doing a systematic review, or following the PRISMA checklist in general, that requires you reporting out a great deal of information that usually is more than a lot of journals want in your method section, and that requires a lot of supplementary information. Supplementary documents can get lost if they're just attached PDFs that are on a publisher's website. They're not always linked in PubMed or something like that. But if they're in your protocol, if all that information is already in your protocol, and it is registered in a place like the Open Science Foundation and Prospero, it is going to be permanently and forever available there and stored, and you'll be able to get that information no matter what. You will just be able to refer to it in your systematic review methods section and cite it, and that will be taken care of, and you won't have to worry about potential documents being lost in the future. So that's another big important reason to consider using one in the future. The main complaints that we always hear about people not wanting to do protocols are about time and effort. Oh, well, it adds extra time to an already long process. Actually, I would argue that it shortens the process because you're laying everything out ahead of time. You're thinking everything through. So then when you're actually going through the process, you have your guide laid out ahead of you so you can do it much more efficiently. And same thing with effort. It's not adding extra effort. You're doing everything in the protocol that you would already need to do in a systematic review already. You're just doing a lot of it up front. You're thinking all of this through up front. And so when you're actually going through and doing the systematic review or scoping review, the process is that much faster. And so why should you be writing a protocol? One, it is required by the methodology, but two, it really does make sure the research is sound. It makes sure the research is feasible, and it really makes sure that the research that you are doing is not part of that swath of poorly done systematic reviews that we're seeing crop up more and more in the research. So if you're interested in writing protocols and want to learn more about it, as I said, you can see here on the right side on the bottom, we do have our own systematic review LibGuide, including a section about how to create a protocol that includes the video I mentioned earlier. But I also encourage you to check out the PRISMA statement and checklist for protocols if you haven't already. The link is here. And then the Cochrane Library also has a great presentation, a slide cast on writing a protocol as well that I encourage you to check out. And now I would like to open the floor for any questions. Some of my colleagues are here as well, Kayla, Lauren, and Stephanie. Do you have anything that you would like to add or any experiences you would like to share about writing protocols or why you found them so important to the systematic review and scoping review writing process?
Sure. I would just like to say that I work with the College of Nursing, and I also work with people in the hospital. And the main thing that I can say about protocols is everyone that has done a protocol that I've worked with, those articles are the ones that get published. It seems like if there's not a protocol, sometimes that project just seems to fall through and doesn't ever get finished up, and it's just sort of kind of out there drifting. And protocols really do help. You've outlined everything from the beginning, and so then it really does, as Becky was saying, it really does make it go quicker because you already have everything outlined and detailed. And then when you're going through the process, it's much more efficient. And we do have a question in the chat.
Yeah, I just saw that. Noah asked, what is the process for revising protocols if necessary? Can amendments be made? Yes, I mean, often while you're working on a protocol, especially in Prospero, it actually expects you to update the process as you're working on it to say, I've done the searches, or I'm developing the searches, I've completed the searches, we're in the selection process. So there is room to update it as you're working on it. I have not actually worked in Prospero, but Stephanie, that Flannery one we showed was yours, correct?
Yeah, and so we updated the protocol. You go back into your Prospero account and you update it. You can update either a file, you can add an additional file, or you can update the language that was currently written, what was previously written. So that is possible. And then in OSF, you can do the same sort of thing. You can update the file. I know Lauren has experience updating protocols in OSF.
Yeah, OSF is really easy to do. And what Prospero and OSF are doing is that they make the changes transparent. You have to actually describe what changes you're making, and that is put at the very top of the OSF instance for your registry. So Kayla and I did one not too long ago, and at the very top it says what data was updated in kind of like a yellowy box. And then it says what changes were made. So the goal is transparency with protocols. That is the whole goal of them, is to map what you're doing and to decrease bias, as Becky was saying. But yes, it's super easy to do, and you should be doing that.
I will say that the only thing you shouldn't be updating is your inclusion and exclusion criteria. So that needs to be settled and finalized before you even look at articles. So going back and fixing a citation or going back and adding a database to your translations or even updating the search to reflect more accurately what you'll be searching for your final review, totally fine. As long as you're making that transparent, but you cannot go back and update your inclusion and exclusion criteria because that adds bias.
Mhm. No, that's a very good point of clarification, Kayla. Thank you.
I would also throw out that protocols are really handy for meeting the new requirements for the Prisma searching extension. So there's a bunch of new requirements set out by Prisma that if a librarian's on your team, will make sure you're in compliance with that. But if you're doing searches yourself, then you have to make sure you're in compliance with the searching extension as well as whatever extension you're using for reporting guidelines. The problem is a lot of your manuscripts, when you're submitting them, only have like so many words you can put into a method section, and there's not enough room to meet the searching extensions requirements without doing a protocol. So a lot of that stuff is put into the protocol now, like what databases you're searching, what coverages you're searching, a bunch of data management materials as well. So you can then cite that in your final manuscript, and it actually really streamlines your final publication.
And I'll just add that we have the resource in our research guide on systematic reviews that follows the Prisma for protocols. And so that one can be used for writing systematic or scoping review protocols. And it's very, very handy. I would suggest that if you're, definitely use that as a tool because it does follow the Prisma for protocols template.
The second protocol that I showed as an example was using that tool, was generated using that tool. And don't forget, like I said, we do have other videos on actually going through the process of accessing and using tools to help write a protocol. So, and of course, reach out to us, me, any of my colleagues at any time, and we'd be more than happy to talk to you and help you with the process if you have any specific questions as well.
And I would also just throw out, like, one of the most important pieces of protocol I view, as well as meeting all the standards, is really thinking through how you're going to norm or how you're going to blind or all these things. A lot of times I've worked with teams who haven't done a protocol, and then we have the search done, and then they're trying to figure out how to norm or how do we double blind everything? What softwares are we using? How are we managing the data? What are we using to extract? And I think that that's a really powerful thing to think about beforehand because it'll make everything else go faster, like Becky said.
Well, thank you very much for attending. If you don't have any questions, then we really appreciate you coming to join us today.